Welcome back, developers, and in this series we are going to cover functions, why functions and what are functions and how do we use functions in modern JavaScript. So let's look at this remote. This is a TV remote. We also have another TV remote. So when we look at these TV remotes, they use functions, or this 7 is coded as a function working on behind it. We have this plus button and also have the plus button, so we can write the same function, then we reuse it. So we can define one function, then we use it many times. Also have this minus button, we can reuse that minus function. So these are some of the uses of functions. So here also we have the upwards function, the upwards direction function, the downwards direction function, and also have this one, this side function, this arrow function. So all these functions we can define one function for all these things, 1 2 3 4, and then we only make difference in parameter. We are going to discuss all that. So these are some of the use of functions. We can whenever a user clicks on this remote button, then that function will be called. Wonderful. With that out of the way, let's jump right into VS Code and explain functions in more detail. So how do we define a function in JavaScript? This is how we do it. We are going to define a function called say hello. So back then we used to do to define function using the function keyword. So you say function like this, function, let me say hello, then the function name here, say hello, then this parenthesis, then you have the code block. This will be a code block of your function. Then I can say console.log hi there. So this is say hello. So this function just say hello. So as you can see, this function is doing nothing. So for this function to work, we need to call it. Same with this on this TV button. So for this button to work, you have to click it. So for the function to work, we have to click it. So how do we click it? We have what we call function calling. So firstly, what we did here was function defining. Then we function calling. So you can say here, say hello. You are now calling your function like this with the parenthesis because it's a function. So it was supposed to work. So here's the result. Hi there. Wonderful. Everything works super good. So let's now look at how we do it within the modern JavaScript with an arrow function. So in modern JavaScript we have arrow functions. We can also use expressions to define functions. So I can say const greeting like this, greeting, then equals to function with the function keyword, then then the code block here, console.log, want to say console.log, right? So we are writing a function expression. I'll explain what is happening right here. Give me a second. Give me a second here. Hello there. Right, again let's call our function. So we can come here and say greeting, then we call it. So hello there, it is also working. So what we did here was to create a variable called this variable is called greeting, and then we are assigning a function to that variable. Remember, whatever is on the right, we are assigning it to the variable on the what, on the left. So this is also, you can define a function this way and you can call it the same way. So now we want to look at arrow functions in JavaScript. So what is a function? I haven't yet defined the function. A function is a block of code. This is a well-defined block of code that does something very well, and we can reuse functions. That's the power of functions. The ability to reuse it, the ability to call it many times. Like this greeting, I can call it many times, as many as I want. I can call it as many times as I want. As you can see now, if hello there, I can call it the third time again as many times as I want. So I can write the same function and use different parameters. I'm going to explain what are parameters and what are arguments as well. So let me just call it once. Right. So we have what we call arrow functions. Arrow functions, these are modern JavaScript in ES6 arrow functions. So how do we write in arrow functions? Let's write the arrow functions of the above functions, say hello world. So in arrow function, this is what you do: use the const, then the variable name. So let's say const say hello. This is the function name, equals to after equals to, you put the parenthesis where you put the parameters, then you put this arrow, this is the return for meaning the return, then the parenthesis, then you want to say console, let's say console.log I Steve, like this. What is happening is we're supposed to work perfectly. Const, alright, const is not defined. Const, this is a const. Why is it say const is not defined? For what reason? Let me use let. I seem like this line is a bug. Let me write this, touch it. If I say const, what is happening? Const say hello is equals to, then parenthesis, then this arrow, then we have our code block. Why is it keep on telling me that I think it's an error coming from Coca.js. I'll deal with that one. Let me see just hello and see what we are going to get. And come here, let me call this say hello. Okay, it's not a big deal. Let me just create a new Coca.js file and try to write const again here. Const say hello, like this. Then I write my arrow function like this, then console.log hi there. Then let's call our function. We can call our function say hello like this. We say hello here, so it's working. So I think the error was coming from Coca.js, so we've just solved that error. So this is how you write an arrow function. The first thing that you have to do is to you are creating. So what is really happening here? This is like a function expression, and this is the best way, the most recommended way to write functions, and I like this way. Not only because of the syntax, not only because of that, but because of its scope, right? So here what we've done, we've defined a function variable called say hello, and then we are using the arrow function to do this code. So now we want to write a function that takes in some parameters. So let's define an arrow function. Let's say const add. This function is called const add, and it's going to have parameters num1, then num2 like this, and then we are going to have an arrow function. And then what is going to happen here? We're going to have we are going to have sum is equals to num is equals to num2 plus num1, like this. So how do we run this function? How do we call? Let's call this function. So we are going to say add. If we call add, you see we are getting nothing, but we would want to also console.log our sum, not a number. So it's giving us a not a number. So what is happening? Let's pass our arguments. Let's pass 20. We want to say 20 plus 20, and we are getting 40. So these are called parameters. So when we are defining our function, these are like placeholders for our arguments, function arguments. So the real actual parameters that the user passes in there, these are called arguments, right? So you can have an array as your parameter, or you can have a string as your parameter. Any data type can be your parameter right here. So this is an example for how to use parameters in JavaScript functions. So I hope you are still following. Let's look at another program, because the best way to learn any programming language is to write programs. So let's create another arrow function called const. We need to say login. This function allows the user to log in. So these are some of the uses of functions. So you are going to be using functions throughout your coding. Maybe you want to, so this function this function do is when the user clicks the login button, then this function will be fired, will be called, then it runs. This is it. If you get this right, then you are good to go. We are ready to move, right? We're ready to move. So before we write this login function, there's something that we must do also on the add function. Instead of saying console.log, we can say return sum. How do we do that? Let's just come here and remove the console.log and then write the return keyword. So whenever your function reaches this return keyword, then it is going to stop. Wonderful. How wonderful is it? Functions are awesome. Alright, what is happening? Return sum. It should return sum. So it will return sum right here, but we still need to, so it was supposed to return sum. I don't know what is happening. Let's just call this again, add 10%, 10 and 10. What if I say console.log sum? Sometimes it will be the coca.js extension not reworking, so you need to cross check. Let me just console.log sum, and we are getting 20. All right, but this is how we use the return keyword in JavaScript. I just wanted to show you, but right here it seems like it doesn't want to work. Let's try to. So here we are defining another function called login. So we are going to have our email. It is going to take our email. Let's have email, then it takes in password. So what is going to happen here? We are going to say so after taking in the password, then if this, we were supposed to use some conditional statement, but we can just you can leave it like that, then console.log, then it can come here and say console.log. If let's say, let's do this. If email is equals to let's just say steve@gmail, we want to use the if statement, so we need to put some braces here. If email is equals to steve and password is equals to 1 2 3 4 5 6, like this. We use the equal sign like this. We also need to use this equal sign to check our email and password. Then we are going to say console.log, the block of our if statement here. We are going to say console console.log login success. Else what is going to happen? Else we are going to do something else. Remember to use strings with the quotes always, because if you don't do that, your code is not going to work. Else we are going to say console.log. So this is the else block statement. Else console.log, try again. So you are going to encourage the user to try to log in again. So what happens if you will log here? Let's run this function called login. So we are coming here, we are passing our parameter. Remember the order of your parameters. We have email first, so let me just say stevie at gmail. Let me try to put the actual things right here at gmail, and then let me put the password. So I need to put my parameters as the strings again. Steve at gmail, then I put 1 2 3 4 5 6. Login success. So it worked. As you can see, now we have login success right here. What if I put a 4? What if I put a 0 here? Try again. It is not working. So this is how we can use arrow functions in JavaScript. Let's look at another program on how to program functions. A program to calculate the area of a rectangle. So we can say have another we can define another arrow function. We can say const rec area. Can just say rec area because we want to find the area of the rectangle. So we can pass in two sides. We can pass the L as our length, and we can pass W as our width, like this. Then we can have this arrow function syntax, and then we say length area. We can say let area be equals to L by W, like this, and we can say return. Return area. After that we come here and let's call our function. So we can call our function rec area below here, and everything is going to work well. Rec area. So we can pass in our arguments. We can pass in like 10 3. So if here it will give us 10 by 3, which will be 30. So let's try to console.log this, because coca.js is not allowing us to use the return. Console.log area, we are getting a 30, as you can see. So these are how we use functions. So the best way to exercise these to understand this concept is to write as many programs as you can. But here I was showing you where we use functions in real programs. We are going to be doing projects in our coming tutorials where we have these login systems, user authentication projects, where we are going to write quite a number of functions. Remember, JavaScript is a functional programming language, so functions are very, very important. These are fundamental building blocks of any programming language, of any program you are ever going to write in JavaScript. It will be made of functions. So I need you to understand functions. Take some time, write as many functions as you can. Functions are very important. They allow us to break down our code into pieces, and then making it simpler to understand and making us to build complex programs in a faster and simple way. So thank you for watching. See you in the next tutorial.